and from the health crisis that we are experiencing as a globe, of course, to another crisis, the humanitarian crisis right here in the country. Last month, CS Chelugui, the Labour CS, talked about 2.2 million households in dire need of social services, with over 1.5 million households here in the capital, Nairobi, sleeping hungry. That is a live discussion that we will be having right now for the next couple of minutes. And I'm joined by Ruth Oloo, who is a strategist at OXFAM. Welcome, and thank you so much for making time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Straight to the current situation in the country. Of course, it has been made worse by the COVID-19 situation and, of course, the gender-based violence. What is the current situation in Kenya, and what impact has the COVID-19 had on humanitarian works here in the country, bearing in mind we are also commemorating 16 days of gender-based violence, the 16 days, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll start by talking about the humanitarian crisis in Kenya. As you've mentioned, COVID-19 is just one of them. But then we also have our fellow citizens in other parts of the country, like the Turkana, Wajir, who've just recovered from floods. But then even before they recover, then locusts hit.
Yes.
And the locusts have hit the arid and semi-arid places, but then it has spread in other different parts of the country. And that becomes a crisis, because it means that all the crops that are in the shamba or in the farms, it means that they are being eaten up by the locusts, and the farmers are not assured of harvest. And so that means that more families are bound to suffer from hunger, and not just the families that are living in those places, but then even the country as a whole, because we are likely to face food crisis. But then, or starvation crisis. But then besides that, then we have the COVID-19. The COVID-19, which has hit the country in a very different way, and it has hit the globe. But then looking at COVID-19 as a humanitarian crisis, we can see that majority of the people in Kenya work in the informal sector. And you can see, we all know that the informal sector has been disproportionately affected. We've seen industries close shop. We've seen people's income go down because they've lost their jobs. We've seen the kawaida mama mboga not being able to sell the produce because, number one, the income has gone down, but number two, even the people who are supposed to purchase, they do not have the purchasing power because of loss of income. And so that means that women, or rather, COVID has disproportionately affected those living with low income. But then looking at it from a gender perspective, now that we are marking the 16 days of gender activism, COVID has brought a very different kind of pandemic. We call it the shadow pandemic, because gender-based violence cases have gone high.
Yes.
They've gone high because, number one, schools are closed, so children are at home, and cases of defilement and sodomy have gone up. Besides that, there is this pressure of loss of income and people not, men and women not able to provide or put food on the table, or those even living in urban informal settlements not being able to pay for their rent. And so we are seeing pressure mounting up in households. We are seeing people not being able to have a dialogue between themselves as partners, and we've seen skyrocketing cases of intimate partner violence because of the stress that has just been caused by the pandemic. Yeah,
indeed. And the government, of course, came in with a raft of measures to help cushion Kenyans, and mostly those who have been affected by the COVID worst, especially in informal sectors. How has the government incentives helped, and especially those who are in dire need of humanitarian help? We have seen some money being distributed. We've seen some taxes being waived. How has it been, and especially for those most affected?
I would say it has been a sigh of relief for those that have been disproportionately affected. And I will say with the Inua Jamii program that the government is running, it has really helped, because that money that these families or these households are getting, they're able to afford the rent, they're able to afford the food. So we can say, I can say that the Inua Jamii project has really helped. I wouldn't say it is enough, but it has helped in one way or the other. And in terms of giving tax relief, I would say, yes, it has helped. It has helped especially those that are in the lower income cadre. And I will say if that is something that the government can embrace, because it will take a long time before we recover from the impact of COVID-19. So I will say that is something that needs to be taken forward. But you will say that government alone cannot be able to sustain the social protection initiative. And so that is why organizations like OXFAM and others have come in to support what the government is already doing.
Yeah, and still on that, 1.5 million Nairobians are sleeping hungry. We have not even touched other counties. And of course, there are other parts of the country who are also in dire need. Locusts are back. We've seen floods in so many places. How has the government helped, and what more should be done, and especially by Kenyans? Because we've seen Kenyans, we come together when there is something big or something, a catastrophe in the country. We've had Kenyans for Kenya. We've also had other initiatives. How and what should we do more as a country to help people who are in dire need? Remembering that next year we will be having the waivers will have, some will have to be taken out, as the government has said. The VAT will also have to be increased.
Two things. I'll look at it from two perspectives. So I think from the government perspective, now that we know that locusts have hit our nation, and this is not the first round. The first round happened earlier on in the year, and we do not know what the future looks like. I think there is need for the expertise that we have as a country to help us to have early warnings towards such disasters. And so that helps the farmers, that helps the communities, that helps the Kenyans to be better prepared for such crises. And now that the government already knows that the locusts are here with us, we have experts in this country. How can we be able to cushion ourselves, or to cushion Kenyans from the impacts of the locusts and other crises? I know there are some that cannot be cushioned per se when they happen, such like Lake Victoria, Lake Turkana is swelling up. What can the government do? Because these are families that are living there, and they are likely to be displaced, and when they're displaced, the chances of gender-based violence go high. And so I think the government should use the early warning systems just to prepare the citizens, but then also it should be more prepared to help to cushion these citizens, because they are likely to face starvation or hunger or even eviction from their homes. Yes. But then in terms of Kenyans, I think this is the time for us to be one Kenya. This is the time to hold each other's hand, because, for example, if those that are living in informal settlements or those that are living in rural communities, if your neighbor cannot afford a meal, what can you do as a Kenyan? I think it's upon us to be the philanthropic. Let us bring the philanthropy back home and support anyone that you know that is in need. Because, I mean, the government can only do too much. The donor community can only do too much. But me and you can support a neighbor or a friend or a relative that we know that is in need.
Yes, we've seen so many institutions come in to help Kenyans, perhaps who have been worst hit by floods, landslide, the desert locust. Now we've seen most of the donations are geared towards fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. And how has this pandemic affected donations? And of course, some of the money that was supposed perhaps to be taken for something else has to be directed to COVID-19.
COVID-19 is a crisis that has hit the globe. And I will say it's just not the Kenyan or the Kenyan government or the donor community that has had, the Kenyan donor community that has had to divert funds, because it's a crisis that needs to be addressed. Then it means that some funds have been diverted to other places. But that means that the other things that were happening before COVID have not stopped. And so it means that things needs to be, like we really need to put measures. Let's say, for example, we marked World AIDS Day on the 1st of December. And the youth was saying that, you know what, HIV/AIDS is still there. How can we ensure that the the people living with HIV still have their ARVs despite having the COVID pandemic? And so I think there really needs to be a balance, and that will be a very thin balance because COVID-19 has to be managed, but then these other things in life have not stopped. So I think the government and other donor community should just ensure that there is a balance, because otherwise we will see more crises happening within a crisis. Yeah.
Final word as we wind up this, of course, now we have the desert locust and also the COVID situation is still firmly with us as we head for the festivities. What more can we do, or what do you see the future of Kenya actually right now that we have the COVID-19, we have the festivities coming, and of course we have also the desert locust, not forgetting the floods that we are currently experiencing in the country?
Oh, I think for Kenyans, what we really need to do, especially, I will start with the COVID-19, I think we just really need to follow the public health guidelines. If it's wearing the mask, wear it well. If it's washing your hands, do it well. But then besides that, we are moving towards the festive season. I know 2020 has been such a difficult year. We've been separated from our families. And I know most people, or most Kenyans, are planning to travel up country, as it is our tradition. I really urge that we really need to continue putting or taking caution or precautions against the spread of COVID-19. So just wear your mask, just wash your hands and stay safe. But then besides the issue of locusts and the floods, I think there is need, number one, to get information from the experts, like what is happening if the area is going to flood and you're given warnings to maybe move to a different areas. I think it is only right for you to do that because, I mean, we are already in a pandemic and we do not want any other, let me say, crisis to happen. Yeah, but then in terms of locusts, I think there is need to join efforts, not just as government. I know there are institutions, OXFAM, we know concern, we have FAO, we have very many other organizations that are working towards containment or managing the locust crisis. But then I think we really need to capture the effect of what is happening within this locust crisis so that we know how we can build back better, and especially building back better by ensuring that everyone is included, and especially those that have been disproportionately affected, that is women and girls and children.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for your time and, of course, for your insight. I've been speaking to Ruth Oloo, who is a strategist at OXFAM, trying to put in perspective some of the issues and the humanitarian crisis that we are experiencing in the country. Not only the COVID, there are others, but the COVID-19 pandemic has overshadowed each and every disasters that have been experienced in the world, adding to the problem that countries are facing. Thank you so much.